Okay, subheading number 2. This is casting judgment. Number 1, the halo effect. And for this concept, our prop is going to be Buzz. So, the halo effect. This is the false bias of assumed characteristics. So, when someone identifies an agreeable characteristic in someone, let's say they recycle 100% of their waste, people who are making the assumption are likely to go on to assume additional agreeable characteristics in that person, such as they must also be very progressive, they must also be decent and fair, they perhaps also share my politics and so forth, etc. It's the halo effect. It's the false bias of assumed characteristics. Or perhaps in the States, if you go around wearing a MAGA hat, people are going to give you different halos. Some will despise you and then some will respect you. This is despite knowing absolutely nothing beyond the fact that they're wearing a MAGA hat. Some people are going to be like, that's my boy. Some people are going to be like, he's an idiot. I was actually in Atlanta in 2016, just after he won, went to a college football game, and this was like the MAGA trend was coming to its peak, basically. And in a club with my mate, and a lot of people in there are, these big conservative blokes. And I was given a MAGA beer coaster, and immediately the way, it's not like things were bad beforehand, but as soon as I had this MAGA coaster and people saw it, people come up to me, yeah, oh, you're from Australia, bro? Yeah, bro, MAGA. Like, it was weird. But that's the halo effect at play. And so don't be too quick to judge a book by its cover. Number 2, Hanlon's razor. This is some sand from the Whitsundays. That's our prop for this concept. Hanlon's razor. We should not attribute to malice that which can more easily be explained by stupidity. Okay? A steady dose of Hanlon's razor in our day-to-day might mitigate much of the noise that actually dominates our life, and will also contribute to you being a better friend and a better partner. Hanlon's razor. We should not attribute to malice that which can be more easily explained by stupidity. Number 3, the Nirvana Fallacy. And this concept is sponsored by Donald Bradman, the greatest cricketer of all time, and he's Australian. The Nirvana Fallacy. So this is condemning something simply because it compares unfavorably with the ideal of the alternative, even though that ideal is in reality unattainable. Let me explain. The most readily available example of the Nirvana Fallacy that I could think of and have read of is the capitalism-socialism divide. Each side will insist that their ideal is superior, and they will not insist the superiority based on the idea's individual merit, but rather because of the unrealistic ideal of the alternative. So the socialist will tell the capitalist that socialism is better because at least there won't be homeless people and poor people. And then the capitalist will tell the socialist, no, capitalism is better because look how bad socialism can be. Do you really want bread lines? Do you really want gulags? And there might be a better way to explain that, but basically, rather than saying, no, socialism is a better political ideology because no one gets left behind, the value of your work can go towards a bigger cause. I'm not really sure what good arguments to have going for them. Whereas the capitalist might be able to say, look, or at least what they should say, rather than just condemning the unrealistic ideal of socialism, they would rather just argue for their own merits. No, this is a system that rewards individual merit and rewards people taking individual responsibility. It's forced altruism. Me making a transaction actually helps the other person whether I wanted it to or not. The ideas are not argued for their merit, but rather through the Nirvana Fallacy, argued through the prism of each side's inferior nirvana. Number 4, concept creep. And this video is sponsored by Young Yogi here. Are you comfy? Yeah, don't look it. So, concept creep. Thinking about it, this concept actually applies most readily to the concepts of sexism and racism. Concept creep occurs when a concept is stretched to include milder, subtler, or less extreme phenomena than those which they referred to at an earlier time. The pool of possible actions said to be racist in 2020 is significantly larger than the equivalent pool of 2010 and predictably smaller than the pool of 2030. Why? Perhaps there are certain points you can gain from signaling these virtues, and therefore, in order for people to earn more social points, they call out others for more and more mild phenomena in order to show the world just how in touch they are with sexism, racism, or whatever. So, just to bow this concept, the motivations for concept creep are that it is allowing people to signal just how in touch they are with whatever the social feel is. Explaining it through the prism of sexism, for example, is such that something that was sexist in the 1950s is undoubtedly sexist in 2020. But a lot of things that are considered sexist in 2020 were not considered sexist in 1950. This isn't a statement suggesting whether something is sexist or not. The point is that from analyzing it as a social phenomena, you can see concept creep has expanded the realm of what could be considered sexist. Do you agree? Number 5, the Dunning-Kruger effect. And this little cigarette is going to act as our prop for this concept for all my smokers out there. Smash like, subscribe, and leave a comment about the cigarette. So, the Dunning-Kruger effect essentially explains our cognitive bias in assessing our competence as being better than it is. So, this is particularly true when we're tackling something new. Dunning-Kruger are two individual psychologists who wrote a paper back in 1999. They observed that we are all more incompetent than we think. Your initial incompetence and inability to understand just how incompetent you are makes you more incompetent, okay? So you'll see on the split screen here, this graph here, we have ignorance, Mount Stupid, where you believe you've mastered something immediately. Valley of Despair, where you realize you're not that good. As your competence increases, you hit the plateau of sustainability. It's a less powerful concept, but it is a nice concept to think of when you're trying to analyze behavior, whether it be of yourself or someone else. Number 6, Subselves. This video is sponsored by the bird. Subselves. Whether you like to admit it or not, or whether you consciously notice it or not, there are actually different yous. There is an office you, a boyfriend you, a mate you, a son you, a stranger you, and so on. We actually use different behavioral processes in different situations, meaning we are not a singular character, but rather multiple characters. Now, of course, this is very nuanced and very subtle. You're not a psychopath. You don't have different personalities, but you do behave differently. And since your behavior informs the rest of the world who you actually are, there are subselves. So the difference between these views is, of course, extremely subtle. We're not psychopathic, or at least most of us aren't. Okay, and that was the final concept. Thank you so much for watching the video. This was actually a shorter clip taken out of a much longer video, which you'll be able to find on my channel, where there's 6 subheadings in total. And in total 31 concepts. So if you enjoyed this, if you managed to make it to the end, first of all, you're a ledge. Cheers. If you liked one of the props, please leave it as a comment. Please like the video. Please subscribe. Leave 5 stars, and have a look at the other videos as well, because there might be something interesting in there for you. I'm going to be making more content, so subscribing is probably the most important one. Click the bell as well. Who knows? Let's hack YouTube algorithm. Just go nuts, spam my stuff. Thank you so much for watching.